What is going on? Thank you so much for coming back to watch this next episode, episode 4 of How to Buy a Home, where we break down the home buying process from A to Z so you can be a more educated home buyer. Now, if you've been finding any of these videos helpful, please like, comment, share. If you know somebody who could find this helpful, please share it with them. I would really appreciate it, as that way it helps me reach more people so I can eventually fulfill my mission of making real estate easier for everyone. Now, if you've gotten this far, you have been searching for homes online. You've been getting out to see properties in person. You've probably seen a handful, and eventually you landed on the one that you love, and you decided to write an offer. And you had a lot of nerves and things were scary, but eventually your offer was accepted. And it's led us to here. Everything from that point and before was just pretend, but now things are real. So today we are going to be talking about the first week and a half of being under contract when you now have an accepted offer in place, and why this time period is so critical to the rest of your home buying journey. Now, if you've watched enough HGTV, you know the reality of home buying. It's pretty simple, right? You go and see a property once, you make an offer on it, you cut to a commercial break, and all of a sudden you're a homeowner. I mean, it's amazing, right? Well, no. Obviously, the reality is a lot more tedious and a lot less sexy. But there's a reason we take all of these steps to make sure that you can go through the process safely and securely. Now, typically, it takes about 30 to 60 days once you are under contract to buy a home to actually become the new owners, to settle on this property. So during this time period, let's just cut it down the middle and say 45 days. You and your dream team will be taking a handful of steps to make sure you're able to inspect the property properly, making sure that there are no repairs that need to be done that are critical, or to negotiate for reduction in price, seller assist, these different things that you can negotiate on during your inspection contingency period. You'll be making sure that you're obtaining title to the property correctly, so that cousin Bob can't knock on your door the day after you buy the property claiming legally that he owns 20% of the home and you're no longer the only owner of that property. And lastly, to make sure that you can obtain the proper financing for the mortgage that you'll need to buy the home. Now, before we get digging into the what of this video, I want to explain why it is important we're going over the key details in the home buying transaction that you're going to be going through. There's a really important key phrase in the offer that you write up and that gets accepted by the seller. This phrase is "time is of the essence." Time is of the essence states, to translate from legalese, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV, and I'm not giving you any legal advice here. But time is of the essence essentially is saying that any date, any obligation that is required for you to perform that has a date on it must be completed by that time. And if it is not, the party that is not fulfilling their obligation may be in default of the contract. And the other party, so if it's the buyer who is in default of the contract, the seller may have the right to void the contract and get out of it. And if you are the buyer who has been in default of the contract, there's a good chance that you would lose your deposit money. So whether it's performing inspections on time, making sure that your mortgage gets approved at the right time, making sure that your title company is doing all of the steps it needs to take to ensure a smooth closing, you want to make sure that these things are being done in a timely manner. It's really important, though, for you to recognize that 90% of the heavy lifting that is done during the transaction won't be done by you. Now, you'll have to sign certain forms. You'll have to respond to your agent and the lender and the title company. But a lot of the digging through the information, getting the ducks in a row, is done by your dream team. And that is why you hire a professional to do the job for you. And not just any professional. One who's going to take the time to explain things to you, one who's going to be timely in all of their duties, and one who will make sure that you don't have to run into any unnecessary road bumps throughout the transaction. So, hopefully after that, I haven't scared you away and you're still with me. Yes, the reality is buying a home can be very stressful, but that is why you hire a great agent. Their job, their duty to you is to remove as much of that stress as possible. So if you're still with me, if you're still following me along in this journey, you'll remember that I said in the first week and a half that you are under contract to buy a home, it is a very critical time period. And that's because there are a few key actions that you must take typically within the first week of being under contract to buy a home. I'm going to list each of these critical items that you'll be taking care of in the first week, and then I'm going to go back over in order each of them so you can get a better understanding. So to start off, you will be giving your first earnest money deposit. You will also be communicating with a title company to start the title search process. You and your lender will be filling out a completed mortgage application. And last but certainly not least, you will be scheduling and attending your inspections if you've elected to do them. So let's go back to the top of the list and talk about earnest deposit money. What the heck is that? Well, simply think of earnest deposit money as like your skin in the game in this deal, the home that you are under contract to buy. Earnest deposit money is held securely in an escrow account, typically by the listing brokerage throughout the transaction. It's important to remember that nobody is touching this money as long as you are under contract to buy the home. However, you can potentially lose it if you do not act within the timelines and take the action necessary throughout the transaction as it's been laid out in your contract. The reason we call it skin in the game is because it's essentially showing how serious you are to the seller to buy the home. And I'll give an example to think about it, make it a little bit easier. Imagine you are selling a home and a buyer comes to you and they give you an earnest deposit amount of $100. And then another buyer comes to you and is willing to give an earnest deposit amount of $10,000. It's all relative to the listing price, but imagine in this case who you're going to take more seriously. I know that the person who is depositing $10,000 has a lot more to lose than the person who probably isn't that serious offering me $100 of deposit money. Now, this deposit amount is typically given within the first 3 to 5 days of being under contract to buy the home, and it will either be dropped off by a personal check, certified check, or wired funds to the listing brokerage. Now, it is very important to remember that as long as you are taking the actions necessary in the time frames that have been laid out in your contract, your deposit money is safe. If you do not, though, and you choose to act out of your contract, out of the duties and obligations that you've been made bound to, then the seller can potentially terminate the contract and take their deposit money with you. This is why you want to make sure, and your agent should be keeping you updated. They are responsible to make sure that you are aware of the dates and the times that you need to be taking action so you can move forward in the transaction safely. Now, in Pennsylvania, you will be going through the title process to close on the property that you want to buy. And within this first week, you will be starting a title search on the property. You may know somebody who owns a title company, and your realtor will definitely have a list of contacts that they prefer to work with that have helped them close on deals successfully in the past. Now, the reason you make sure you do a title search is to take title cleanly for the property. And what I mean by this, and I alluded to it earlier, is when you buy a home, you want to make sure that you are the sole owner of the property. That, Cousin Bob isn't going to knock on your door and say he wants 20% of the home or 20% of the value because he rightfully owns it. By doing this title search, you make sure that you can take title cleanly to the property. Additionally, During this time, the title company will be doing research on the property to see if there are any pieces that would stop the current seller from selling the home to you as the buyer, as the potential new owner. Important to remember also is that title insurance is required if you will be obtaining a mortgage, and you almost always, and I will say always for my clients, want to obtain personal title insurance for any mishaps that may occur after closing. On to the next part of the list, completing a full mortgage application. Now, typically within the first 7 days, you will have to fill out and complete this mortgage application with your lender. You'll have to submit certain documents, and you guys will be going back and forth for a bit to make sure everything is in place. It is important to know that this does not complete the mortgage process for you. It's just the first step, but you have to complete it in the time frame that it's been outlined, typically a week, in your contract, or else you will be in default, and the seller would have the option to terminate and take your deposit money. So let's make sure we get this mortgage application completed early and easily. That way you and your lender can take the next step. So the last item on this short punch list is scheduling and attending your inspections. Now, keep in mind, in the next video in this series, I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the inspection process. But for now, I want to take just a brief bit of time to explain why you need to schedule and attend your inspections as soon as possible. So in the offer you wrote that has now been accepted, you agreed upon a certain amount of time that you could have to schedule your inspection, attend it, get the findings back, and submit your initial reply to the seller for any repairs, any credits given to you, any changes you want in the initial offer now that you've done your inspections. Well, typically speaking, that time period in southeastern PA in June 2020, because I don't want to get called out in a few years for being incorrect, typically speaking, that time period is between 7 to 10 days. So you have to do all of those things that I just mentioned in that 7 to 10 day period. As you can imagine, it would be very advantageous of you to get this done as soon as possible, because you don't want to be crunched for time. When you're crunched for time, that's when you start acting less objectively, more emotionally, and a bit more frenzied. We want to make sure that you have all the time you need, or at least enough time to breathe, think, get any quotes you need, and move forward so you can continue to buy the home that you love. So yeah, that certainly was a lot to chew on, and I can understand if you need to take a break after this one, go grab some snacks, do whatever you need to do. But it is important to remember that this first week and a half period that you are under contract is critical, as it sets the pace for the rest of your transaction, the rest of the time that you are under contract to buy a home. Keeping in mind that a majority of this heavy lifting will be done by your dream team, and you just added a new member to that dream team with the title company you choose to work with. But I say this purely out of love for my clients. It helps to be responsive, open, and communicative with your agent, your lender, and the title company. Reason for that being, you guys are all working together, and you want to make sure that you're on the same page every step of the way so you can hit those deadlines we've been talking about, feel good about it, and make sure things can move forward efficiently. Now, in the next video, we'll be doing a deep dive into the inspection process, and you're going to come to find out that it ain't all HGTV and sprinkles. But don't fear, we're going to break it down, make sure you understand what's going on, like always. And if you have been finding these videos helpful, if you've been finding any new information that you think will either help you or someone you know become a little bit more educated about the home buying process, I would really appreciate you liking the video, commenting on it, sharing with somebody that you think could use this information. As like I said earlier, it will help me reach more people, and my goal, my mission, is to help to simplify real estate for everybody involved. This is Noah Scott, Realtor at Vanguard Realty Alliance. Thanks so much.